Christ is really at the bottom of every rabbit hole. Every rabbit hole leads back to him ultimately and his truth. That's what I found over and over again. It kept hitting me on the head where I was just like, that's a bit strange. And I'll just put it, I had like 1,000 working models in my mind at any one time. And I'd just get to this dead end where it was about Jesus. And it just hit me on the head again. And
And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. And they loved not their lives unto the death.
So it's great to have you down here, Nick. You've come up from Victoria.
yes,
Been staying up here with us. And after we had a spontaneous conversation, and then you were baptized on last Sabbath.
that's right.
So we've, been having some great conversations together, and over the short time that we've known each other, and we can really see just in so many ways the way that God is moving these days. And we're doing these interviews just to show that movement that God is bringing, and to show a lot of just to share the ways we've all been coming together. And so tell me a little bit about yourself and your journey. I guess you can start at an early age, but the common threads that we have, that have all led us all into, further and further up the ladder of truth. I just want to bring out some of those things. So please start where you think would be.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the start of my life, I was Catholic.
Right.
I was with my family. I went to Catholic schools with my brothers, and I went to church. It wasn't any kind of serious Catholic family. It was my parents wanting good morals for their children.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother particularly had a Christian upbringing with her mum. And so I listened to Jesus a lot in the churches. We used to have religious studies, and I was always very curious about Jesus because he just sounded like the smartest man that I had ever seen or known. Everything about him was very forgiving, compassionate, nice, all of these things that I gravitated towards. I don't know why I gravitated towards them, but I just knew that was good. And I knew when I tried to embody that with my friends, that everything flourished. I listened to Jesus a lot, honestly, from prep to grade 6. I always found him curious because things like where he tells you to forgive your enemy, and if your enemy takes your coat, give them the turncoat too. That I remember those words standing out. And I had a Scottish priest who was very charismatic and very edifying, and just a very good spirit about him. And I just gravitated towards Jesus generally. And I suppose after that, I started growing older. The world started entering into my life in more ways. It was always there. But I suppose you get older, you want to start to make an identity for yourself.
Yeah, and also the pressures of the system that we're in.
That's right, being cool or not cool. Yeah. But I don't think I was ever the type to move away from something because it wasn't cool. I actually thought it was cooler for you to follow after what you believed in.
Right.
But I just think I matured in understanding the world. You really understand now, in retrospect, is always trying to take down Jesus. And I know subconsciously that would have been working away in me. I went to a Catholic high school, and I did study a class called Texture and Traditions for Year 12. Mm-hmm. And that focused around studying the Bible as an historical artifact, not necessarily as a spiritual book.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot in that respect, more about the Old Testament and things like that. But I hadn't yet dived in so deep. Like the Bible didn't come to life to me then at that point.
That's kind of the way I see, like, all our education, like you were saying, it's trying to pull us away from God, away from Christ. Every year in school, if you go to university, all of that stuff, all that knowledge and science, falsely so called, it's constantly eroding away that childlike faith that you had as a child.
Yeah,
it's totally attacking it. And you can tell why you possibly became agnostic. Obviously, we all, I guess, agree to that and consent to it in a way, but it's still, once you have to fully expose that system in order to really regain the childlike faith.
Yeah, it all led to further questions around philosophy, unpacking a lot of, I suppose I had to build up in their system to then go and destroy it and then build back up again myself.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
so I had to go test every spirit.
Yeah, that's right. And all the past experiences we have that the enemy has done, we can use that to turn back on him. And a knowledge of his evil, used to expose it. Like Apostle Paul did when he knew I guess all the intricacies of the Jews' religion, as he called it. He could turn it back against it and destroy it, so all these experiences are valuable in the end.
Yeah, I had experiences with the dark side of all of this that really started to make me understand that there was an enemy. There was a real force.
Yeah.
And later on personified. But I had to find out the world isn't just chaos and randomness. It's there are two sides going
Absolutely.
on, and I experienced both very deeply in a way that I never really have talked to my family or my friends in real detail about, because you have to be there to understand it. And if you've never gone through it, you just won't understand how deep that goes, how serious it really is. And
they also don't want to know, because they have because when you live in the world, you have so much invested in the world that to I guess start pulling a piece out of it, they're not willing to do that. Because they've bound up their interest in this world being good.
Yeah, we were talking about that the other night, and we were saying that to pull one thread really is going to pull down the whole house of cards.
That's right.
And it's a lot of work to build it back up. You have to go start putting bricks in place, you have to know what the correct brick is. And that's a lot of work because you have to sort through so many bricks. I went through all of the spiritual faiths. It actually, like, initially as that was going alongside, I was also figuring out a career and figuring out what I wanted to be. And I just knew I wanted to have impact, and I knew I wanted to help people. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up, I was going into psychology, and I was also wanting to work in emergency relief and provision, like disaster relief. Sure. And that ended up like starting to be my journey. So I visited Southeast Asia for many months and traveled around there, and obviously very Buddhist, even Hindu in many cases. And I just started reading, learning, practicing different things like yoga and meditation and these sorts of things. But just more traveling was opening up the world for me. You move from all those textbooks to actually being on your own I was with my best friend, and we went exploring and searching, and that was a rite of passage in many ways. So it's like starting to take real ownership of what do I really want out of life. And I knew always deep down that it was that spiritual journey. So after that, after I'd come back from that, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to travel more to find out, because I got so many answers from traveling. But this spiritual thing was going on beside it. And this brings me back full circle to what I was thinking before, but couldn't. When I was in prayer, I remember just praying, and not as a young kid, and asking for truth. Yeah. Not caring about wealth or fame or anything at all. I just wanted to know what the truth was. Like, why are we here? What is this all about? And I'm sure that's at the root of really everyone if you clear it all out. So after that, I studied to do teaching because I wanted to use that. I didn't want to be a teacher, but I kept getting these notices to think about teaching because you can do it anywhere. So I went and did further postgrad study in teaching, and then traveled some more, went around the world. But all of this really coincides with me trying to learn about the financial world, the environmental world, the political sphere, like everything. I wanted to learn all so much because I wanted to be able to help people.
Yeah.
And as I kept learning these spheres, they all kept correlating, like coming back to like the same threads. And for me, that was very interesting to see, like it's all based in money, and it's all based in power. So
Like even the humanitarian and relief spheres.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all deception.
Yeah, there's a lot of corruption in there that was
Yeah.
very disturbing.
Yeah.
I remember working for the Red Cross, and we had to do training on sexual trauma and things that were taking place by the volunteers.
Oh, really?
So it was very surprising to see that something that was meant to be very, something that was meant to be helping people was actually destroying what was already destroyed. They'd gone through earthquakes, destruction, and so this was opening my eyes in so many different ways, and it was all leading back to the spiritual that was parallel. So like I had my own pursuit in the career and probably your outward life, how people see you, but then underneath it and underpinning it was always the spiritual, which was always getting more of my attention.
Yeah.
And so these were starting to collide, I found more and more. And I ended up going through testing every spirituality, every religion.
Mm-hmm.
I went through Buddhism and Zen particularly, and Hinduism, and read the Quran. And I was always going to come back to the Bible. I always wanted to see Jesus in a mature light. But then I suppose it all started coalescing with 2020.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That year.
It definitely did. Everything
That's really
started,
not long ago.
No, everything started turning into hyperspeed.
Mm-hmm.
I went to London to work for a while, and I had many questions. I was looking up the world. It was going to the more darker parts of the internet and what's out there. You know, anything from black budgets to aliens and all sorts of things. I was trying to figure out, you know, where is this all headed? Where are we all headed to? And because I wanted to work in the UN, because I wanted to work.
You want to work in the UN?
I did want to work in the UN, like with the disaster programs, with the disaster relief. It usually, the UN is kind of like the linchpin, and then it's got disaster programs that come off from there.
Yeah, okay.
So I was always learning about that. That's why I was working in local governments and things like that, because it's a good base to build your skills from. I was doing a lot of volunteer work, but I would read in policy for governments how they would always do like 10-year directions, 10-year plans. And I remember going to London, and they were talking about, you know, 2030, 2040, and they were talking about resource war. Like, this was for their local governments. They were talking about resource wars, low water, pestilence, famines. They had all this that they were building into their current planning of what they should be understanding with the challenges moving forward. So, I mean, you know, the whole narrative of global warming and all this was paramount. And
of course, yeah.
Was going.
That was driving or justifying all these policies, I guess.
That's right. And I wanted to be helping. So I was reading this stuff, but it was also going into AI. And it was also going to very strange place like transhumanism, like as a way of saving humanity. Wow. So no matter which way you wanted to look at it, if you wanted to find the truth, you had to go to these strange places to find out and learn more. And the more I kept looking, the more it was a biblical view. I started coming back to the Bible more and more, listening to more ministers. I started learning about Revelations in far more detail. The prophecies. Yeah. I started looking into the prophecies themselves and how that to me seemed like so beyond. That to me seemed like the craziest thing.
Because this was all in 2020. Well, thereafter.
It was, to be honest, like it's thread throughout.
Right.
But it started culminating in 2020.
Right. Okay.
And that was a very strange time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the prophecies to me were the craziest things. And I think we started having lockdown.
Yeah, sure. When was, I don't even remember what that was.
That was, I think it was beginning of 2020 or maybe
Yeah.
March, but
Mm.
it does become a bit of a blur
Yeah.
about the timelines. And so I was, for me personally, in that time, I'd come back from London. I was living alone in an apartment. I was working in the city. I was going
In Melbourne, in the lockdown central of the world.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was going to and fro from my apartment, which was great, but then lockdown happened. So you're locked down in your apartment. And it was a very strange experience because everything started going digital. You're working online all the time.
Yeah.
You wouldn't see people except for exercising, but everyone's got masks on. It became very dehumanizing.
Yeah.
Disconnected. So while this was happening, I was researching more and more. I was aware of the UN Agenda 2030. I become aware of the Agenda 201. I mean, this was years before even all of these pockets of information were coming together. And so I knew a big event was coming. When COVID hit, it wasn't right away that I understood that. But
no, that was surprising. It was a thing, but I wasn't sure. We didn't know it was going to be what it became.
That's right. Absolutely. I thought with 2030, I thought we maybe had more time with what they were proposing. And I was familiar with everything they were talking about. They talked about sustainable development goals, and they put it in such, they put it in such a good way, but it's obviously very underhanded. Anyway, so I understood this stuff, and I understood 2030 was a big important year for like the fourth industrial revolution, I'll call it that.
Yeah.
And so all of these things, I knew I had to keep studying. I knew I had to find the answers. I knew I was on the trail. And I started finding out that the prophecies were real. I started finding out that the biblical prophecies, if you test them, if you go research them, you could go and find out according to secular sources, not even the Bible itself.
Yeah.
But secular sources, you'd find out.
Proves it. Yeah, that's how you prove prophecy. Prophecy is history that was written beforehand. Yeah.
That's right. And so it blew my mind, to be honest. No matter all of the things that I'd been researching before, this was the thing that it started becoming really uncanny. It felt like I was also on it. It felt like a spiritual thing. It didn't felt like a conspiracy thing.
Right.
It felt like a spiritual thing the entire time.
Yeah.
I'd never felt this sense of fear because I knew what I thought before was Jesus as a kid, the universe in my adolescence, and these kind of more Eastern spiritual understandings. It then started to move towards the Bible again. And I was having this question of, is Jesus real? I was asking this to myself. And it was in the back of my mind all the time, just thinking about it. And so my Eastern philosophy and the Eastern spiritualities, they ended up leading to Gnosticism.
Yeah.
They ended up leading to the occult.
Yeah.
And then I found out, like where I said before, that the professional world and the spiritual world, they met.
Yeah.
And I understood that all of the professional world is based in occultism.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, then I found out that they ultimately are Satanists. I found that out. And I started wondering, why do the people who spend the most money on, like, why are trillionaires, why are billionaires spending their money on worshipping Satan and doing all things around Satan? That was something that I had to explore further. And so I also saw like their family lines. I saw where the money connected to their family lines. I saw their history. And that leads you back to, okay, now I need to test all the science that these people came up with. And I found out around carbon, what do we call that? Carbon dating? Carbon dating. Is quite a farcical science. I found out around evolution being made by a very deplorable character and Masonic. Mm-hmm. I found out about Copernicus and his relationship with the occult, and Galileo, and all of this is actually mixed up with the Vatican.
Yeah.
So these were the last final pieces for me. Mm-hmm. And then one night, like I was just looking up one final piece of information, like it didn't seem like the final piece, but it was like a puzzle piece, just like slot into place. And I realized that information, it was talking about people who had alien experiences. And they were being abducted. And so I was learning about aliens because I think that's going to be something that we learn about going forward, or that's going to be put in the narrative going forward. So
No, it's been in the narrative for like forever now.
That's right.
Yeah, since like at least the 50s and that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's becoming more prominent.
Yeah.
And the Pentagon and these guys are putting it out.
Yeah.
And so you have to wonder if the Pentagon's putting it out, why are they doing so? I mean, if
Yeah.
you're really a military outfit, are you going to give away that kind of information to your enemies? I mean, there's reasons why they do these things. So I looked up, there's this one group called CE4, and they're one of the biggest research groups in America. And they ended up connecting alien abduction to demonic practices. Everything that was happening with alien abduction to these people was similar to satanic rituals.
Right.
And so the only thing that stopped it, that they found out through empirical research, was when someone invoked the name of Jesus Christ.
Right.
Instead of the name of Jesus, like,
Yeah, okay.
stop. And so all these people having these experiences, it stopped.
Mhm.
And that for me was the last piece of the puzzle. And that, I don't know why, but that, you have your own individual experience. It's slotted in to the last kind of framework of the picture. And that's when I knew Jesus was real.
Right, okay. And when was that?
I think that was 2021 in March or
Okay.
April.
All right.
It was almost like a year into all the lockdown
Yeah.
things.
Mm-hmm. And you sent me an email probably not too long after that.
That's right.
Yeah, and you just basically told me that you wanted to get involved because you appreciated some of the things you saw or something.
That's right. You guys, as I started to learn about the occult and some of the true history,
Right.
you guys were doing such great research on it, but from a biblical point of view.
Right.
So while I was looking at it from different points of view, I came to your channel and I started just watching some things, learning about it from a biblical perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciated how you were a Christian group that was actually talking about real truth.
Yeah.
Everything going on with the pandemic.
Yeah, I think, yeah, and I think a lot of people are afraid to really. A lot of people see this, but they're afraid to talk about it because they feel like it might turn some people away, which it might.
Definitely.
Which it will, but without that, you won't draw the people who really have the courage and who really want to move forward. People who want to acknowledge what they see.
Yeah, I think after coming to the truth of Jesus, I went into my cabinet that I had, and I had a small New Testament Bible
Yeah.
that I had kept since year 7 from the Catholic high school that I went to. And I remember one of the first things that stood out was, knock and the door shall be open, seek and you shall find.
Mm-hmm.
And that stood out to me because that I don't think that I know that I couldn't have found Jesus with all the information I was looking through. If it's too big, there's too much, there's so many threads to chase and pursue. There's so many, rabbit holes that unfold, that it's like the Holy Spirit really was guiding me along each thread that I needed to sort of put in for my special, unique path. And so for me, like coming to that truth and seeking you shall find, I think it's a very serious thing to seek after Jesus. He tells us that if you really want to seek him out, we'll have to be with your whole heart, your whole mind,
that's
your
right.
whole soul. And coming to your point, so many people aren't willing to give that energy and rather enjoy their life, relax, and it's difficult to blame them. But for me, there was nothing more important than finding out why we're here, and there are consequences for not seeking. You find out
Of course,
later.
look what's happening to all these people now who have had the, experimental medicine, and look at the consequences we're seeing all over the world. This is the harvest of all those years of truth, and truth seeking being available to them, and now the time has come when, the result of those who have sought the truth, in spite of the consequences, have been spared, have spared themselves by saying making the right decisions, but those who have blinded themselves by not acknowledging truth when it was brought to them have fallen.
Absolutely. I feel like, in my journey, I've been seeing the pandemic has been creating a rift in the whole world.
Drawing a line in the sand.
That's right. And it's two roads. And those who are willing to accept what the world is saying and what the governments are saying and what the World Health Organization and the UN are saying, they're going one way, and it ultimately leads to a transhumanist path. And
transhumanist, by transhumanist you mean this distorting of you as a human being made in God's image.
Yeah, the things Elon Musk are talking about, a neural link and uploading your consciousness into a computer and onto the internet.
Controlling you via the radio waves with the technology that's been implanted in you, etc.
All these things like that, it gets beyond reality where it's difficult to even, like, people call things a conspiracy, and you have to grant them that it's difficult when you get to these places. Reality and what's not reality starts to blur beyond, but all of these things are definite, like there's enough there to offer serious considerations beyond, not just enough, but it's so beyond the pale. But what is actually happening is difficult to pinpoint.
Yeah,
but
we can't pinpoint what it is.
That's right.
But you hear the remarks that these people who are controlling it say, and it's enough for you to know that it's some seriously dark stuff.
Absolutely.
That they are meddling with the human race, and they have a very sinister agenda.
Yeah, and when we come to understanding, as I did, the biggest thing after finding out Jesus was real was coming to the Bible and also understanding that Satan is real.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I used to think of it as just understanding that there was a dark force to balance out the light, and it was a natural equilibrium of whatever this reality is that needs to continue to balance out. Yeah, these kinds of Eastern philosophies, but it is immortal
Satan.
being. Yeah, with an ancient history that goes beyond what we can understand. And when you understand that he has to play by God's rules, when I'm reading the Bible and I'm learning that, and you read in Job and how he has to come before the throne, and you have to understand that God has provided us a certain level of protection where we have free will, where Satan has to tell us his plans as part of us. That's what God grants us. And so when people say, like, that's a conspiracy, or like, why would they tell us their plans? It's so silly. It's like they don't understand the spiritual underpinning of everything about this realm.
That's right.
When you get to that, then you understand the rules, and then you have eyes to see and ears to hear, as Jesus says as well. And so many just walk into things because they say they would never do that, but they're literally being told to their face, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And because they've been told that, they think it's never going to happen because that's so ludicrous. But you have to understand that that's the rules of the game. The evil has to tell you what it will do. Yeah. You have to give your free will up.
You have to be willfully ignorant or just totally blinded yourself. Like Bill Gates said that the vaccine was the final solution.
That's right.
They're telling you that they're using that language for a very specific reason.
That's right. So, like, friends and family, like, you will lose them because of Jesus. It does take courage, but they also have to understand we're at that point anyway where things are going to only get weirder and stranger and darker as we move into the times ahead. There's no choice in it. There's nowhere I'd rather be. I'm so happy and fulfilled in where I've come, and I'm so happy that my path has been led at this time to be able to come up to New South Wales and see you and Laura and little Finley and receive the baptism at Tom's hand. That was a beautiful moment for me, but it was it just felt like a coming full cycle of accepting Jesus in that apartment to now actually proclaiming Jesus in front of a Christian family. Yeah,
absolutely. And we've spoken, privately amongst ourselves about how when you were explaining to your friends about how they're sort of questioning your choices and the way you're going, and you said to them, you told me that you said to them about, you explained yourself. And tell me
That's
again.
right. Yeah, I said the essence of who I am has never changed. Yeah. I've always been the same underneath, and it was always about finding the truth. But the information you find out that is actually real is just so different to what's being presented in front of you. And that when you conform to that new information, which is the Bible, which is Christ, of course things are going to change. But the very essence of who I am, I'm not a different person. I just found out. The truth. That's it.
Yeah, you were convicted by the Holy Spirit of what the truth is, and you left everything else behind. You might have been telling your friends before that, well, personally, I had rejected the Bible, and I was quite vocal about that to my friends. But when I had come to see that the Holy Spirit had convicted me through reading inspiration, I was willing to turn around to them and say that, yes, this is actually the truth. But prior to that, not that it's justified, I had been doing what I had thought was actually the truth, and to change that, I became a new person after that, because with that new knowledge, you are now, and also with the conviction that you were a sinner, comes a change in your life,
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But essentially, it was the same motivation, but just that motivation was purified at that point, because I allowed God to take away those idols out of my life that were misdirecting me down these false paths,
Yep.
And when you became sincere in yourself, that's when God could reveal the truth to you. I remember that moment very clearly for myself.
Me too.
And
yep.
Yeah, it's just it's like a coming home. When you are convicted of that truth, when God shows you like you talking about that puzzle slot into place, that was that moment for you. Which may have not have, if someone else could come across the same information and it didn't mean the same thing.
Yep.
For me, I remember that moment also, but it was through a different avenue. But it was like a spotlight just came on me, from God, and I was immediately assured of the truth of His word, and that He loved me, and that this was the truth, and I rejoiced in it.
Yeah, it's funny. We talked about each of our stories, and you were telling me about the white book that you were reading.
Yeah.
To come to the truth, and mine's a bit more left field. Aliens is what I said is the
right,
final puzzle piece, but I suppose there's not enough time to talk about how that built up a mosaic of everything.
Yeah.
And what I really understood, and what I tell to as many people as I can who are on the same seeking trail online, because there's a few people who have diverged away from the traditional social media channels, and they're all in different places now looking for answers. And so when I talk about it, I say, Christ is really at the bottom of every rabbit hole. Every rabbit hole leads back to Him ultimately and His truth. That's what I found over and over again. It kept hitting me on the head, where I was just like, that's a bit strange. And I'll just put it, I had like 1,000 working models in my mind at any one time. And I just get to this dead end where it was about Jesus. And it just hit me on the head again. And I just had to put that to the side and go, okay, like I'm going to keep looking at history, keep looking at politics over here, like, and eventually, like I said, it would all come back to this trail. I don't know if you had the same experience in but for me personally, I couldn't find anything but Christ. When you really, some people, like, you tell them just keep digging, because you'll find it. If you keep seeking hard enough, you'll find Him. You can't avoid it.
Yeah. You told me you had that love for Christ in your youth, and I guess everyone does at some level, because Jesus asked that we become like little children, But I guess I agree with you that every rabbit hole ends at Christ, because it did for me, certainly, in the end.
Yeah, and my testimony was about that, the faith of a child, because it's interesting. We were talking before about friends and family. The friends and family think, and so many of my family has been beautiful about my coming to Christ. They still struggle with trying to understand everything, but they also very much support me, and I'm so thankful and blessed for it. My friends have been beautiful too, but they just don't quite understand it, and I can understand that. I can really see from their perspective. I used to be on their side of the fence, so I can tell how it would be so hard. But what they don't understand is that when I was youngest and coming through life, Jesus for me was very personal already. So when I came back home, it's not this character that's come in that gives you all these rules. It's like the love of your life.
Mm.
It's like your heavenly, it's like your Father,
Yeah.
you know, and like the one who created all of this. It's such a, it's like your soul just like melds into Christ, like, and everything else becomes less important as a result. And so it's not about losing them or not caring about them anymore. It's just that I have a love for God that far exceeds anything else. And I wish they had the same.
Yeah. And also, you know that your connection with Christ is the only way that can help them. And even if that means you separating yourself from their company, for them to know what you're doing is important for them, because it makes what you're doing real.
Yeah.
You know.
I always thought if you're going to be a leader in life, like, and if you're exploring these truths, like in many ways you're leading, you're trying to find answers that in the Eastern understanding, in the Eastern philosophy of what I thought I was doing, you know, used to hear of monks or whatnot, and they would go to the top of mountains to find information and come back down and bring it back to society. And that always resonated with me, is like, push yourself to be the best you can be, mind, body, soul, in every pursuit, and then, you know, bring that information back down to those who weren't seeking. And so with leading, you're always going to be put in a position where people think you've gone too far, or people think like they're worried about you, or they're concerned about you, or they don't really understand it, or they think you've gone the wrong direction because they themselves have not pursued. They can't understand, like, you know, you coming to Christ because they haven't yet, and it hasn't changed their whole world. So you have to come to terms with understanding that you're always going to be at a difference with the people who aren't willing to put every effort into doing that. And then you have to be willing to sacrifice and humble yourself by maintaining that love for them while perhaps they look down on you in some ways.
Yeah, that's right.
And still show them that love that will ultimately lead them to the truth if it can. I mean, it's obviously God who leads every man and every woman, but you're the vessel. And that's so right. There's a great power in you being able to embody all the things. Like, this is what the Bible teaches us, right? Like, you really want to conform to Christ himself so that others start looking at you, see the changes in your life. That's always something that's interesting for me, is like, if I see these kinds of changes in someone else, I'm curious. I want to find out. I want to learn, like, what made these big changes, and especially when it's in a change for good. Like, if you suddenly saw someone turning to drugs and becoming homeless or abusive, okay, you might want to steer away from that, even though I'd still be curious personally, because I want to find out how to help that person. But maybe other people would say that's just no good, and I don't understand that. But for someone who's, you know, I don't think my life was ever havoc, but I was definitely doing things that needed cleaning up. And when I cleaned them up even more, that to me would be a curiosity for me that I suppose my friends haven't shown. But there's more to understand around that, and I think that's got a lot to do with coming to Christ is a big deal. It's a big pursuit. It's a lot of sacrifice, and I don't know if everyone's willing to do it.
No, well, they're not. You know, Jesus says, "Enter in the straight gate." You know, and for wide is the way that leads to destruction, and many there be that go in there. That's just the reality, unfortunately.
So for me, I got to then come here with you guys. Me and you had a phone call. I loved the work you did at Earthen Vessels. I'd emailed you prior. But Melbourne was still unfolding, and I was trying to figure out what to do. Yeah,
we talk a bit, and then it kind of left it for a while.
That's right. And that's why it really does feel led. Like, I didn't just start emailing you and pursuing you guys. It really like just curved back to you guys. That's I remember seeing an email with your newsletter for the Sabbath, and I knew I was already following the Sabbath in my own way as much as I could. And that's been a blessing coming into the EV family. I think the great thing is when you see Christians, there's the most beautiful people. They're the most beautiful people, like the ones who are seeking really honestly. You feel it. You feel it everywhere you go, no matter which family, like whether it's online or Christians want to help you. They want to embody Christ, and it feels like family with people you've, you know, only met for a little while. So then I got to come here at your wonderful invitation. It didn't seem like I had something planned, and then I just thought, I think I should get baptized, and ended up working out completely.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's been a real blessing for us, and yeah, we you know, like it's actually, unfortunately, sadly, much more rare than it should to see people coming up so fast and just willing to move forward as God leads. It shouldn't be difficult. You know, the decision to get baptized shouldn't be difficult. You know, obviously we have to evaluate ourselves and whether we're in the faith, but there's no need to, you know, hesitate. You know, obviously the only reason you hesitate is because you want to cling on to this world, you want to cling on to sin.
Yeah, and Chris, I wonder if that wave isn't starting more and more, because as things get more dark and we can see the signs, you know, we see pandemic 2.0, 3.0, whatever.
Yeah.
We see really what's happening with the vaccines. If people are being honest with themselves and the multiple theories that they're coming up for the reasons of all these sicknesses, but never inspecting the vaccine. We see Ukraine and Russia and all of Europe and America getting involved. We see some signs, and I just think that God is making this crest of a wave. I can see it online. When I talked about those two parts earlier, you see so many people coming to God.
Yeah.
So for people who are not looking or don't know where to look, they won't see it. They'll think that everything is happening as
they want to
normal,
hang on to this world.
I see a flood.
Yeah.
I see a flood of people coming to God. I see so many who are understanding the times and thinking, you can't put your faith in governments, you can't put your faith in the world. But more than that, it's not just that God is a last resort. They're finding out that God is true and that so much of what they've been told has been fabricated over a long time.
That's right. The enemy's plans have flushed out those who want to know. It's just becoming so obvious now that you've got to be blinding yourself, you know, in a massive way not to see it. And anyone who's got any integrity is coming out. And it's gonna, you know, as much as they're trying to end the game and, you know, gather as many as they can, that very aggressive warfare they're waging is actually working against them. You know, there's nothing you can do against the truth but for the truth. That's what the Bible says.
Amen.
As much as the devil tries to destroy the truth and all the censorship that's happening, and it all works against them.
Yeah.
Because people realize how corrupt this world is. It makes you sick at heart, like we're seeing now over this whole event in Ukraine. The censorship that's happening even more, and it just makes you want this world to end. It wants you to make Christ to come, and that the truth might be free again, and, you know, and everyone to, you know, people, all those that are willing to see the truth can be in one place, and that's really what we want.
Yeah, and for someone living in the world, I always try and think of this because I was once there, and I would see someone talking about Satan and God, and I'd be like, you've got caught up in some cult or something they might be thinking, but it's like, once you really understand these patterns, once you really go back in history, once you really keep learning that these are the same things happening by an immortal being, that's the only thing that pieces all of history together. That's the fact that there is a devil, there is Satan. It's the only thing that you can understand that dictates human behavior here on earth, because bad things keep happening. That was one of the things I wanted to keep figuring out. It's like, is there at the bottom of humanity, is there just some part of evil? But we're really being directed. Paul says principalities and powers.
That's right. It's multi-generation, the same agenda being pushed through. So why would people who have, you know, 75 years to live or something want to continue the same thing, even though that doesn't realize in their lifetime? It has to be Satan, you know.
And when we come to the prophecies, and as I said, that was when the penny just dropped for me so much. I couldn't believe that they could be proven. I was so blown away. But here we come now to the forefront of prophecy.
Yeah.
And so many people are starting to see it. So many people are starting to see that the cosmological understanding of the universe is not what we've been told. And it really all bears down to the understanding of trying to separate us from our Father.
Exactly.
Separating us from our Creator. So although there are dark times ahead, it's also exciting. It's also a blessing. It was a blessing to be baptized. It was a blessing to come here and meet you and Laura and spend time with what I would call family now, and also the Earthen Vessels family. You know, there are blessings we can find in these times if we cling to Christ.
Amen. Absolutely. Well, it's been great talking to you, Nick. I'm sure that there's many out there that I've really appreciated hearing the same thing that is in their minds and hearts, you know, because that's really what it's about. So thank God for your journey, and thank God for uniting you and all the others that are going to come together until, you know, these dark days that are going to actually be some of the most wonderful times that you know, in history at the same time.
Amen, Chris. Thanks for having me, brother. And you know, it's a pleasure to be able to testify on behalf of Christ. You know, everything He did for me,
Yeah.
everything He did for me on the cross. And so to be able to share my story in the hopes that it can even help just one person, you know, it's a true blessing. So thank you to you and Laura and Evie for having me.
Yeah, thank God. Great to have you.